All right, Latin 2, good day. We are moving on to lesson 24, where we are talking about relative clauses. So purpose clauses, if you remember from the last two chapters, are where you use ut and ne to say you did something in order to that. Relative clauses, relative clauses are kind of like appositives. If you remember appositives back in chapter 3.4, and I'd encourage you to go back and review that if you don't remember them, but it's like putting two nouns next to each other, and the second noun is descriptive. So Christ, the Son of God. And you remember that you have to have the same case for son. So like if you say, I praise Christ, that would be accusative, the Son of God. Okay, so that would have to be accusative. The relative clauses are kind of like that. So you're going to want to turn in your grammar toward the end of the pronouns section to section 139. And you've got this list of your relative pronouns, and they begin with Q. And the C's, they're sort of like pronounced like a Q. So cuyus, qui. For whatever reason, they're spelled with a C, but they're basically pronounced like a Q. Anyway, you can see how in certain cases they look just like first, second declension. Obviously not in the nominative. The nominatives actually kind of look like the plurals, right? So you got to pay attention to that. Anyway, you can see the examples here. So let's look at page 247, and I want you to pay attention, for instance, to number 1 and number 4. The Gaul who was in the camp, right, was a slave. So again, it's kind of that appositive feature. The qui is agreeing with Gallus. Now, the thing here is that the relative phrase, the cases may actually not agree, and number 4 is a good example of that. The Gaul whom I saw, okay, the Gaul whom I saw was a slave. So the case has changed here because the Gaul that we're talking about, the verb in the relative clause is not third person, right? It's not talking about the Gaul seeing, it's first person, it's talking about me seeing, okay? The Gaul whom I saw. So, so even though you normally would have agreement if the function of how that noun, that person, that thing in the relative clause is changing, for instance, from a subject to an object, then you've got to change the pronoun, okay? So if you turn the page now to page 248, first of all, we have a couple new vocabulary words. Auxilia would be a military term, kind of like copier, forces, agmen, column, okay? And by the way, this phrase, memoria teneo, this is going to be a really important phrase for the rest of the book because it's going to talk about honoring certain soldiers, like Roman soldiers or American soldiers, and we hold them in memory. And so it's kind of a fancy way. It's kind of like this phrase, impetum fecerum, they made an attack, instead of saying they attacked. They made an attack. So this phrase, it's kind of an idiom for we remember. We remember. It's technically we hold in memory, right? Teneo, but it just means we remember. So it's an idiom. All right, so let's look at the exercise. Caesar, who was a great general, so this is 263. Caesar, who was a great general, conquered the Gauls. So what case is that going to be? Well, it's going to be the same case, right? So this one really is kind of an appositive. In fact, you could just say Caesar imperator magnus and leave out the verb, but we want to put in, so Caesar qui imperator magnus fuit, right? It's going to be a nominative to agree with this because we use nominative case with the verb to be. Okay, fuit is the perfect of est. Okay, it's the perfect of est, right? Sum esse fui futurus. Got to make sure you get those principal parts down for verbs like sum because they come up a lot. So Caesar, qui imperator magnus fuit, Gallus vicit. And this, of course, ties into your history lesson today, doesn't it? Okay. However, how about the next one, or number 3? Caesar, whose, right? Now we've got the possessive form of the relative pronoun. Whose victories we all praise, okay? So the victories are the direct object of the verb praise, and whose is a possessive. So now you're going to look on your chart for a genitive singular, right? And that is cujus. Cujus. So Caesar cujus victorias omnas laudamus imperator magnus fuit. Okay? Or think of number 4, the same thing's happening here. You've got deus in the nominative case, but then what case are you going to use for the relative pronoun? God to whom we give thanks is our Father. So what case is that? That would be a dative case, right? So it's going to be qui, cu long I, qui. Deus qui gratius agamus pater noster est. So let me go back real quick and you're going to hand in exercise 260 today. But I thought maybe we could go over number 2 real quick. Should have done this at the beginning of the video. Galli sepa absides inter se dederunt ut pacem confirmarent. So again, here's this idiom that we see at the top of page 224. The Gauls sepa often, dederunt would literally mean give, right? But it means exchange. The Gauls often exchanged hostages among themselves. Inter se would be a reflexive pronoun, right? Third person reflexive pronoun. In order that, and so dederunt is perfect tense, so we have to have the imperfect tense, right? Secondary tenses are the tenses that happen before now, like perfect, imperfect. So we got to use the imperfect subjunctive in order that they might confirm or maintain peace. Okay, so you capture these people and then you give them back so that you're not always, having a blood feud amongst each other. The Gauls often exchanged hostages among themselves that they might maintain peace. So confirmarent is what number? It's plural, so it's got to be referring to the Gauls. It's not referring to peace. Pacem is accusative. It's not the subject. This is not a passive form. We'll get into subjunctive passives later. Okay. All right. Now back to our lesson here. Why don't you guys work a little bit on 263. 10 to 13. So break up into groups and pick the correct form of quique quod for 10 to 13. And then what I'd like you to do for your homework for tomorrow is, first of all, I'd like you to do reading 15 for next Monday, reading 15 for next Monday, and Tuesday, excuse me. I may assign some other homework, but that'll be the big assignment for next Tuesday. And then for tomorrow, for Friday, I would like you to do exercise 264, and let's do 1 to 8, 1 to 8. And so again, explain the agreement. So let's look at number 9. Let's look at number 9 real quick. Ego qui Romanus sum tibi non quedam. So this is a future tense. I will not surrender. I who am a Roman. I who am a Roman. So here the relative pronoun agrees in case with ego. I who am a Roman will not surrender to you. Okay. So the agreement is that it's the same case. All right. So how about number 12? Here we have a hiberna, and this is just a good time to review that castra and hiberna are plural nouns in Latin, and so they're going to use plural verbs, plural relative pronouns, plural adjectives, and yet you're going to translate them as singular. Some of you guys are forgetting that on your homework, so make sure you get that. So the winter quarters in which the Romans were, right? In which. So here is a preposition. Preposition takes which two cases? Accusative and ablative. So this has to be ablative, quibus, in which the Romans were, in which the Romans are, is narrow. Okay. So again, even though it's sunt, you don't translate it as are, you translate it as is. Okay. The winter quarters. Well, in this particular case, winter quarters, we probably might do are in English, but if, like in castra, the camp, you would translate that as singular. So the winter quarters in which the Romans are narrow or is narrow. Okay, so I'll let you get to work on this, numbers 1 to 8, and make sure you explain the case of the relative pronoun so that you can show how it agrees with the noun that it's modifying, but it may be a different case because of the function in the relative clause. All right. God bless. Thank you.